Hi everyone, I'm Angela. Welcome and welcome back to Angela's Fashion Mix. I hope you all had a fantastic day. And if you are new, welcome to the channel. I see that several of you are new, and I just want to say welcome and I hope you enjoy your time here. This is where I talk about fashion, some lifestyle things, periodically a DIY, and today is more leaning into lifestyle. And I wanted to share this video because many of you know that I'm a realtor. If you have not heard, I've been a realtor for 22, let's make an adjustment, as of the 31st of this month, 23 years. And through the years, I've had the opportunity to work with several families who have, for a variety of reasons, had to have parents, grandparents, aunties, whoever come into their homes to live with them as their permanent home. And I've also had several where there have been estate issues with regard to collaborating to make things happen with regard to division of property or selling property and things of that nature. So I wanted to share for caregivers in this video today some things to consider. We are at an age, and in a lot of cases, younger as I was when my parents came to live with us. So you'll hear quite a bit about that process. But I was 43. Although it was planned for, the time that it happened was not planned for. So we'll be talking about that. I'm also sharing my experience in which my brother, who also passed away, was without a will. So I'm sharing a little bit of information in a few different areas, but primarily for caregivers and for those that are in the care of the caregivers. That's what this video is about. So I hope there are some takeaways for you that you can find beneficial. Also, keep in mind that things are going to vary with regard to laws from state to state. Also, I am a realtor. I am not an attorney. I do not give legal advice. I do share information. I also mentioned that I was going to have a guest in this video, and she is a home stager. I've known her for 10 years. We've become friends over the years, and I'm sharing her information as well as a bit of her story because she is a recent caregiver. Our situations are completely different, but because of where you may or may not be in this stage of your life, you may find something from one that you'll find helpful, and you may find something from another story that you may find helpful. So I'm sharing a combination of things. But before we get into that, there are some things I want you to just kind of consider before we get into the meat of the video. If you are going to be in someone's care and you've got a property to sell and you're going to be drastically downsizing, I would suggest plan that if you can, and start to downsize, start to declutter, start to get rid of all those wonderful things that you've acquired over the years. And when it comes to the clothing, one thing I had to do with my mother, because they were coming from a house to a bedroom and a closet, we went through her closets, and if she could wear it, she could keep it. If she could not wear it, she either had to donate it or she gave it to thrift. She could have given it to her friends or whatever. But we had to have a hard conversation about what she could keep because the space was so much smaller. And it was a struggle for her because my mom sewed. And in her mind, she needed to keep everything she ever made, whether she could wear it or not. So we had that conversation with regard to the release. And it was a hard conversation to have, but we did it. One of the hardest parts for my situation was the emotional part of it. My dad was a jack of all trades. He had a shed, and in that shed were tools of all kinds of things he made. All kinds of things were in his shed. One of the hardest things I had to watch was the day we had a yard sale, because when it came time to get rid of the house and get them moved here, we had to get rid of things. And watching him watch people at the yard sale go through his shed and his things walking out to the street with a stranger was hard for him. It was hard to watch because these were his personal things. Now, he felt that way about his tools, which is probably the way my mom felt about her hats. My mom was a first lady and she wore hats. Outside of church, she wore hats. She had a lot of hats. And she had donated to her friends. She had given some away. We had a ton of hats left at the yard sale. And even at that point, she wanted to pick and choose why she needed that hat. So, like her clothing, I had to convince her that there was limited space for her to be able to bring things from home to here. It was a conversation to have, and it was not an easy conversation. These were her things. And the emotional part and the detachment from your parents' things or your grandmother's things, being strong for them in these moments is hard, but being firm is also necessary because adjustments have to be made. When your family member comes into your home, it's important to be really in tune to their behaviors, to their feelings, because if your family member is one who does not share or is a very private person and holds things in, it becomes very important to be able to read their face, to be able to read their behaviors, and for them to not feel excluded or feel like they're being a burden or feel like they're out of place, because they are out of place. They were just brought into a familiar place, a comfortable place, but it's not their place. So I would say stay in tune to what that looks like from the emotional part of it and getting acclimated to settle into this is where the new home is going to be. That may take some doing. But while they're in your space now, and I would say early on, have that conversation while someone is still capable of having these conversations. Talk about your family history, those things that you've heard through the years, and you know people, you don't really know how they connect to the family or just stories you've heard over time. Your family member is going to probably enjoy just reliving and retelling a lot of these stories. And it's an opportunity to just spend some time in their environment and what's in their heart to share and give them an opportunity to do that. But it's also a great time to create maybe a new tradition that's inclusive of them, like movie night or just taking them out of the house to an event that maybe they haven't had an opportunity to go to. Because we, at my age, at the age I am now, or even earlier, we do things our parents did not do. So to include them maybe and expose them to some things that is your lifestyle versus theirs, it's a great time to do that if they're physically able to do those things. But sometimes, even if they're not physically able to do those things, just making a sacrifice to do it with, they will appreciate. And it's a perfect time, but I suggest early, to find out what their wishes are for their final days. What is their wish for their funeral services? Who do they want to perform the eulogy? Who do they want to sing? What is their favorite song? All of these kinds of things are going to be needed at some point. So now's a great time while they're in your space to find out those things. Does mom want to be funeralized in a blue dress or a green dress or a white dress? What is the plan? And same for our dads. My dad was a pastor, so he was funeralized in his robe. My mom wore hats every day of her life, so she was funeralized in one of her favorite hats. So get that kind of personal information. So at this point, it's all about the person you're caring for and what their wishes are, and that their wishes can be carried out when that time comes. So have that conversation. And if it helps to record it so that it's for other people, for you to be able to document it so that others know what they wanted, so there's no confusion about that, record them. Let them tell you on your phone what it is that they want to see or what it is they want to have happen during that time. And if you are the one receiving the care, relationships are definitely very important, but know that the person that is opening up their home and their hearts to you to bring you into their environment is out of love and it is out of your best interest. So be as patient as you can with the process. And it's a huge process, it is a huge transition, and it's sacrifice on everybody's part to make this new situation work. And it can be very effective if everybody is willing to participate and everybody is willing to be patient with the process and sacrifice some things. If you know a caregiver and you don't know what to do to assist, you know they have a lot going on and things that you would never even consider because you're on the outside looking in. But I would say one thing that everybody in that household is going to do every single day is eat. If you can gather a couple of friends, or if your siblings or if you are neighbors and you want to help in some way, you all could maybe form a group and collaborate with each other and just take turns, maybe once a week or once every other week. If the caregiver does not have to prepare one meal a week, that hour or two that it takes to do that, especially that special Sunday meal, is going to take some pressure off of them for that one day. And that is going to be a great add to what they have for the coming week or for the next day ahead. So there are things that you can do, but if you don't know what to do, ask the caregiver, how can I assist you? I've seen so many things over the past 23 years in my real estate career. And if you're arguing over dishes, that's a small thing, but it's enough to cause negativity in relationships. Now, we all know Tabitha Brown, and I believe we all can quote this thing that Tabitha says at the end of her videos. If you can't have a good day, don't go messing up nobody else's. Don't be the reason that someone has to question whether or not they want to be what you need them to be in your time of need. Be nice to people. Just be kind. And as my mom used to say, if you can't say something good, say nothing at all. I know your mama said it, your grandmama said it, everybody's mama said it. But you don't want the person who may be your caregiver to have a reason to question whether or not that's something they should do. So there's a lot in this video. I hope that you find something that maybe you can find useful. And if it's not for you, it may be for a neighbor. It may be for a coworker who you know is going through things. The important thing is to find the resources in your area, have some understanding of the laws in your area, and go from there. There are professionals in professional organizations that can help you get answers to a lot of questions. I wanted to bring this to your attention because, again, in 23 years, I've seen so many things. And I wanted to share it here because the largest demographic of my audience is in an age range of 40 to 65. And we're in that pocket where we're caring for parents. So I wanted to be able to share that. I hope you enjoy the video. If you have not subscribed, please subscribe, like, and share the video if you find it useful. Today I'm talking to caregivers and to those who are going to be in the care of caregivers. And I'm honored to have someone here today with me who is a friend of mine who I've known for 10 years. She is Patricia Evans, and she goes by Pat. And Pat is a local home stager and redesigner. She does decor. So welcome, Pat, to the channel.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank
Glad
you
to
for
have
having
you.
me.
Absolutely. And I wanted to bring Pat on because, as part of the caregiver conversation, Pat has recently moved her mother into her home. So we're going to do a little bit of tour of the home, and she's going to talk about a few things in that regard, and hopefully you can pick up some tips from that and how the space has changed since she has made that transition. Also, I'm going to be sharing some personal parts of my history with regard to having had my parents in my home, as well as the loss of my brother and what that looked like in some areas. But I want you all to be able to have some takeaways. Hopefully, that will give you some direction, give you some things to think about with regard to being now our ages and these roles reversing. So now we're becoming at our ages. I just turned 59. Pat's also the same age. And those roles reversing and can reverse at unknown times. There's no designated time for that to occur. As I was 43 when I was in this position, and Pat now at her age, just getting in this position. So the goal here is to just give you something to think about, and hopefully as you're making these life transitions, that you can do them in an easier fashion. Glad to have you here and appreciate the time that you're giving to this conversation and opening up your home to be able to just share with my audience that there are things that we can do to make our parents' golden years better and bring a bit more quality of life to what that looks like. Fortunately for you, you had time to plan for it. My situation was a little bit different, as in I had no time to plan for it, not in what it ended up being. We had some conversation, but ultimately what happened with my dad falling and breaking his hip just kind of threw things in a progressive way. But we were prepared and we rolled with what we had. So we're going to start and we're going to take a look at the space that Pat created for her mom. But before we do that, I want Pat to tell you what she does, how long she's been doing this, and introduce her business to you.
Okay, thank you. My name is Pat Evans, and I am the owner of Pat's World Staging and Redesign. I am a certified professional home stager, along with being certified in interior decorating from the University of Richmond. I have been in business since 2014, and I basically work with real estate agents, investors, homeowners, home sellers, and now I'm working with people a lot more in the redesign portion of the business. As we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about having your loved one come in. And so after going through that whole process, I know kind of like firsthand some of the things that you're going to go through and some of the things that you're going to expect.
So along with that and being a decorator and the redesign, so you can assist clients online.
We can assist people online, and we do that by way of our e-design service. And with the e-design service, that's basically set up for people who, so you get some people who like to do the work themselves, or being that we are located here in Virginia, but you may be in North Carolina or someplace like that, we can also assist you with that as well, with you sending over your information to us and us helping you create a space for the individual who's going to be coming into your space.
That's a great service to have, because a lot of times people know they need to do something but don't know what to do, and trying to find ways to be able to create those unique spaces.
Right. And that's something that we do love to help people with. We know the world has changed, and with that changing of times, our space, it's a whole different element of how we need to utilize that space.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to take a tour of the space that Pat has added onto her house to be able to accommodate having her mom live with her. So Let's take a look at that.
Okay, so come on in. Let me show you around. So this is my mother's space. And with this space here, it was designed especially for her. It's nice size room. She has everything in it that she needs. One of the things that was important to me, because I know she liked to do Bible study, and I wanted to have a space where she can do that. And so what I created here was seating at the foot of the bed. And the reason why we did this is because it utilized the space and give her the most capacity to do everything that she needs to do when she needs her privacy. Another thing that we wanted to do is the bed was very important. It was one of those things where we didn't want a queen bed because it would just take up too much space in the room. And so we opted for a full size. We wanted something that was bigger than a twin bed. And so I think this came out very well for her. It gave her everything that she needs within her space. Another thing that I opted for my mom is the TV. She loves looking at TV. And so instead of having the TV on the dresser, I wanted something that was elevated from the dresser that she can easily see from her bed. And so this works out perfectly. And on top of that, it gave her the option of putting things on her dresser that she needs. So another thing that was important is having a full-size mirror in the space. This allows her, when she's getting dressed, she's able to see herself. And then on top of that, she loves her greenery. So double the greenery, which is a bonus point. Another thing that was important was the decor that we used within the space. I wanted something that was open and airy, but still something that actually showed the beauty of the room. So I opted for these wall plaques because it gave me the opportunity to see the wall, but it also gave me the opportunity to see the design within the wall hanging. Also, another thing that I wanted to do, I'm a type person when it comes to design, I like drama. And so I opted for this mirror right above the bed, and that gave me exactly what I was looking for in the space. And it also bring your eyes up to the ceiling because the ceilings is only 8 feet. And so it just elevated where it made it look like it was taller. And so that was really important. When it comes to the curtains, I opted for curtains of color. And I wanted it pop because I knew I wasn't going to get it in the wall itself, because at the age of my mom and even myself, it's easier to change the color of the decor than changing the walls. And so for me, you will see like pops of color throughout the room. You can see it in the pillows and things like that. So if ever we want to change the colors, it's easy to do. I can change the curtains out, and then I can just change the decor out from the bedding. It was important for me to have a bathroom that comes off of her bedroom that she can utilize. And so, of course, with her being of age, one of the things that we wanted to do was to create a walk-in shower. And not only is it a walk-in shower, it's just one that you can use the doors from one end to the other side. So whichever one made it easier for her, we're able to do. And so this is part of the detail here. And so we can open it from this end here, and we can open it from this end here. And it makes it really convenient for her to access the shower. Another thing that we did is we had to think about, with her getting older, the space that surrounds. And so what we did, we made sure that everything was already handicap accessible. And so if you're having to build a space for your loved one, if you have the option of creating something that's new, you want to make sure that the doors is wheelchair accessible. Because if you have the option of building on new, or such as myself, I had a half a bath turned into a full bath. What you want to do is to make sure that it's wheelchair accessible in the process, because it's going to save you money in the long run. And so as we age, we just never know how that may turn out. And so it's already done. Another thing that we did is we made sure to have a window. This allowed her to have access to the outside when she want to look out there, and it also brings light in. I opted to hang curtains because for her privacy was important, and so I opted for full length curtains because I still wanted to feel like a room. I opted for like a little brown here to elevate the space. Didn't want a whole lot of artwork or anything on the wall, so what I opted to do was to bring in these starbursts, and that gave me everything that I was looking for. And again, we talked about pop of color, and so purple is one of her favorite colors, and so we brought in these little purple flowers. What I want you all to consider when having to bring a parent or loved one in to live with you is consider the individual and consider where they are coming from. We want them to have a space that is for them. We want them to have that emotional connection to their space because it's a big deal for them leaving a whole house with 5, 7 rooms and coming down to one room, and then they having to share their living space with you all. Again, when it comes to design, just take into consideration what their favorite colors are. Take it to something that's going to be around, that's going to be classic, and something that's going to be around for years to come, because at this point in our lives, we just don't want to spend a lot of money having to redecorate over and over again. If you're in need of help, by all means, reach out so we can do a consultation with you and help you along in that process. We're about to enter the living space that my mom has access to. Okay, so this here is my mom's main living space. I want to share this space with you because as we take more of a tour of the home, you're going to notice why this is important. This here is her space that she can sit back and enjoy. So when it came to this space, also wanted something that she can maneuver around really easy. I wanted to make sure that we had enough seating for when family and friends come and visit with her. Something that she can easily have conversations with the individuals. And so one of the best things about her having the main living area is because it was already set up. She has space that, again, she can maneuver through easily. And as she progressed in age, we have an ottoman that's here, but we can easily move this ottoman and give her more of a clean walkway and to sit on the couch. One of the good things that I really like for her is that we have the fireplace here. With this fireplace, it's operated by gas, and so it's two phones. If we were to lose power, we have this fireplace, but it's also pleasantly aesthetic for her as well. One of the things that I wanted to do is to make sure that we had plenty of lighting. And so with that, I opted for 2 lights for the console, and I also opted for lights flanking the side of the couch. And we talked about pops of color. One of the things that I really love about the space that is unexpected is these green curtains here. So we have like a lot of neutrals going on, but these curtains here is something that I truly, truly love, and I love the feel and the elegant feel that it gives to the space. So now we're upstairs. For me, this is an important area of the home. The reason is this here is my space. It's something that I created for myself. I was fortunate enough to be able to do this after my daughter left home years ago. So this here is my girl cave. This here is my space when I need to get away. And on top of calling it the girl cave, I also call it like my apartment. It's very important for me to have things around that I love, such as my books. I have my entertainment because I do love my Bose system. I listen to my CDs, so that was important. And it was also important to have seating for when I have company. And that way, when I'm up here, my mom is downstairs in her space. Just as the rest of the house that we've gone through, it's still important for me to have pops of color. And so my pops of color came through my peonies. Love, love, love these. And it also came through my drapes as well. To wrap this up, again, if you have the option of creating a space like this for yourself, it is so important to do so, because not only will it allow the separation, it will also give you a peace of mind that you're going to so much need in the transition of having your loved one move in with you. Because it's one of these things, it's not easy, but guess what? When you come up to your space, it's going to make it a little bit easier for you.
So, we're going to start today's conversation with some things that I think may be beneficial if you are in a situation that you have a loved one that's going to be moving into your home, or if you anticipate that happening somewhere in the future. I'm sharing a few of my personal experiences. Pat's going to jump in with something that she wants to add, but I don't like for people to be blindsided when I have information that I think is going to be helpful. So that's what this video is about. And I've delayed putting it on for a bit, just trying to formulate my thoughts and just pull it together. I decided to ask Pat if she wanted to be a part of it because her mom recently moved in with her. So I'm going to start there because when a family member, be it a parent, be it a sibling, be it an aunt, whoever that person is that comes into your home, the dynamics of your home will change. Okay. So, Pat, tell us a little bit how your life has changed. You're single, you've had run of the house as you've seen for a lot of years, and now you're sharing this space with your mom. How has that been?
It's been a transition. It's one of those things when you're so accustomed to being by yourself. I don't have to talk when I don't want to talk. And now all of that has changed because I do have to keep in mind that she is here and spend time with her. Mm-hmm. One of the best things that really helped through this transition is this space here that we're setting in right now. Because when I get to those times and moments that I need time for myself, I can easily come up here, I can close the door, and I can have my me time. And so with that, it has helped me tremendously.
I'm sure. I'm sure that is a big transition. And I think that when we bring people into our space and that family dynamic changing, whereas in my case, I had both of my parents in my home at the same time, and it was unplanned. So there was a discussion about the what if. We had had a sit down family conversation years before, but at the time that it happened, it was unplanned as my dad fell, he broke his hip, and he broke his wrist on the opposite side. And they were in a different state. So I had to bring them here on a quick decision. But the space in my home was already there because we'd already had that conversation prior. So my sisters, my brother, we all knew when the time came, it would be where it was. The difference was now I had a young daughter who was 8 at the time. I was working, my husband was working. And so now we had to make some really big decisions about how things were going to maneuver. And when that time came, and it had to be very quick because nobody expects to fall and break a hip, but they had to come here because they were in a different state. And the situation at that time was because my mom had had a stroke about 10 years earlier, she was a little bit limited in some things she could do. So my dad did a lot of things. Well, now he's out of commission. So we had to make some adjustments. But because the space was there, and like you have here with your mom, now they're moving out of a house, which was supposed to be temporary because he was supposed to come here to recover. Mm-hmm. So those few months that we expected that they'd be here turned into a whole different situation. Now they're maneuvering in a bedroom with a full bath and having range of the first floor. So we're sharing common space.
Mm-hmm.
The great thing about that with my parents was they were grateful and didn't want to be a burden. Not that they were, but they understood this was our home. So in trying to make adjustments with family members, the family members also need to understand that moving into somebody's space changes their lives. So yes, you want to be a support system, and yes, you want to be able to take care of your family members, especially parents. But parents also should understand that they're walking into something that everybody is experiencing together as something that's very new. So I encourage you all to have conversations early. So if you become the home, it's not a surprise to anybody. When you knew that your mom was going to be coming here, you had a house to sell.
We did. We had to sell her house. And one of the best things for me in this whole process is I asked her to move in because I knew she was getting older. The neighborhood that she lived in, it was just like changing. And so I wanted her to have a space where she was comfortable. I wanted her to have a space where she felt safe. And I wanted to make sure that she had everything here that she can possibly need and be happy in the process.
Mm-hmm.
And so, even going through the process of selling a home, that was a chore in itself. Fortunately, I am a home stager, and so I was able to go in and stage the home. But with that said, it's still some things maintenance-wise that needed to be done. And it's one of those things when you have a parent who has been in the home like over 20 years, that's a process in itself because some of the things they may not necessarily understand that they're going to have to put money into the home to get it sold. It's a process. We have to tread very carefully with the loved ones because it is a big transition for them and it's a big transition for us, the people who's going to be caring for them as well. And so what I would say is just make sure you pack a lunch bag of patience because it's going to be required, but
Absolutely.
At the same time, just even though you're going to be in the midst of it, think about what it's going to look like when you come out of it. And sometimes it's easier said than done, but you will come out of it. And, it's just one of those things. Just keep a positive outlook. And even if you don't have like family members, if it's just yourself, just make sure you surround yourself with other people that can help you along the way because you will need that support system of people that you can talk to in the whole process of what you're going to be doing with the individual.
Absolutely. I think one thing that you touched on a little bit is the emotional part of them breaking down that their life has changed.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately for you, your mom is of good health, and this decision was made while she's in good health.
Mm-hmm.
In my situation, they lived on their own, and they were in another state. So, but I did have my brother there. So when this happened, we had this conversation and we were in position to make this happen. The emotional part of it with regard to them now being just in a matter of a couple of weeks being taken from their home, from their life, from everything they know, from church, from their friends, that was hard on their part. And watching them, because like I said, it was both my parents together. Having my dad for those couple of weeks, going through the surgery, going through rehab, and now it's time for him to be released from rehab. What does that look like? The thing that got me was the day that we were packing them up to come here, because we didn't know how long recovery was going to take. And we were sitting in front of their house, about to pull off. I was driving, And my dad looked back at his house and broke down. My heart at that point was broken. That hurt me to my core because they're leaving everything they know to go to an unknown. And so be prepared as best you can for the unexpected emotional outburst. Now, he didn't break down boohoo and all of that, but he broke down enough that I recognized the pain. And I've got a 2-hour drive, and I didn't know if this, are we going to do this for 2 hours, or, you know, is it a moment that he's going to pull it together? And now, because he's in this space, I look back at my mom, looking at him, what are we doing? Yeah. That was a whole situation in a quick moment of time to process. So that was when I realized, in a very real way, they're leaving everything they know. So it's not just moving from point A to point B. It's all those emotional things that are going to come into play. So because we can't prepare for those kinds of unknowns, I think, again, it's really important to have prior conversations about the process. And that's part of why I wanted to share about this space, because I think sometimes, and it's hard to give you details, and even if I give you details, it's hard until you get to it. It's going to be different for everybody. It really is. Because everybody's situation is going to be different. So I'm sharing some things for you all to consider. Yeah. And, you know, and let me just say, too, like Angela was talking about, that she had to move her parents 2 hours away. For me, I'm fortunate because my mom was only like 15 minutes away. And so it's one of those things, if she ever need to go back and reminisce about her house, we can easily get in the car and we can go over there and she can see the space. And so that makes a huge difference as well. And I also want to talk about the transition, because one of the things that we did go through even before she actually got here was that we were talking about leaving the whole house where she get to do anything that she want to do, and then coming here. And we kind of like had to have like rules set up for the both of us, because it's like one of those things where I had to respect her space, but she also had to respect my space. And so that's something as well, that's a transition when you're used to living by yourself, or if you have a family and you're having to bring that individual in. So, you know, conversation, communication goes a long way. Setting boundaries. And when I mentioned having my daughter, you know, as a parent, and a very active parent, and she was very into sports and she was into school activities and all of these things, now I have to manage these schedules along with my parents' schedules, because I couldn't leave them alone. We could leave them alone, but we weren't going to just leave the house for 6 hours and leave them by themselves. So the other part of this, and why I was able to have them come and for things to flow as well as they did, fortunately, my husband was very hands-on. And in those situations where we've had conversations, and when you agree 15 years earlier to something that may or may not happen, when it comes, now it's important to know that you've got that commitment inside of your home. And he was A1 when it came to my dad having haircuts, my dad needing a shave, my mom needed to be lifted, my dad needed to be lifted, we wanted to get him out of the house, all the things that needed to be done, doctor's appointments, not just here, but in North Carolina. Because until we found doctors locally, he had to go back to North Carolina. So having a spouse that's understanding that this dynamic doesn't just involve me, it involves him. And he didn't detach from the new situation.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't know how long it was going to be. We didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
But he jumped in moment one and rolled with me until the end.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it comes to going into somebody's space, it's important to understand they're making sacrifices, not just when it comes to physical space, they're making personal sacrifices for the good of the person coming in. Because if I'm not happy, that's going to translate to him.
Mm-hmm.
So, for everything that he was able to do to make my parents comfortable, I'm looking at this man now in a very brand new way
Mm-hmm.
because he hadn't had to experience that.
Mm-hmm.
But the way he performed to assist me, to assist them, A1. And I couldn't have asked for anything else.
Yeah.
So I was very fortunate in that way. And for you that are couples, I hesitate to tell or suggest. I can only recommend that you have those conversations so that when the moment arises, you all are on the same page. And if you are not on the same page and that person can assist you and they say, well, I can't do X, but I will be willing to do this thing, then let them do that thing and commit to that thing. And if you commit to that thing, then that's your contribution to helping.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to make everybody's space feel a bit more comfortable. So, Pat, as a single person, what would you add to that for those that are doing this on their own?
As a single person, it's really difficult. Not only being single, but being an entrepreneur. And so it's one of those things where I had a business to run. And unfortunately, sometimes in a situation like this, your business have to kind of like take a sidestep to make sure that your loved one is being taken care of. And so if you have siblings, if they're around, do communicate that with them, what you're going through, because you will need their assistance because you just can't do it all alone. It's also one of those things, not even just your siblings, but your tribe, the people that's around you plays a big part, and I can't stress that enough because everybody is not going to be fortunate enough to have like siblings. Everybody's not going to be fortunate enough even to have like a tribe around you. So of course do the best you can, but just know that you will get through it with time. And just make sure, whether you're a Christian or just stay prayed up, because you're going to need that higher power to bring you through, and you're going to have to listen to that inner voice.
Absolutely. And with that, you mentioned just having that tribe, and that tribe may not be family.
Oh no,
that tribe
yeah.
may be your closest friends. So it's not the friend's responsibility to do what they do. Fortunately, I had good friends who were able to assist in some ways. But if you've got a couple people who can, on a given day, just come and relieve you for a couple of hours, because I promise you, you're going to find that there are ways that you're going to be impacted that you didn't expect. And for doctor's appointments, because my dad needed a wheelchair, that was another whole level of fatigue. You all know how heavy wheelchairs are? And we talking about a basic wheelchair. There was no mechanical components to it, but they are heavy to lift. And not only that, just being able to assist. The other thing about the day they came, and what I think doctors or nurses that release this patient into your care don't consider. My dad left rehab with 15 medications. 15 medications. Some of which were added just based on the hip fall and all of that. So when I signed him out of rehab, nobody asked if I knew how to read. Nobody asked what kind of house he was going to. Nobody asked any pertinent questions with regard to what's going to happen after he leaves their care. They knew who I was, and they knew he was coming to my house. That was all they knew. So now I'm going into nurse mode. This is a new space for me. It's very different than caring for your child. Now this is another adult, and now I've got to manage his medication. So now I'm creating spreadsheets, tracking everything. 15 medications on what intervals of the day.
Wow.
That was a lot. But I got it done because it had to be done. But if you are the caregiver, that's a part of the care that you maybe not have considered because you're used to your parents. Just they take their pills, you know they're taking pills. You may or may not know what they're taking. But now, as the manager of their medications and what their doctors are saying, it's another whole world. You mentioned something earlier with regard to the time involved as an entrepreneur. I'm self-employed. My husband, we were self-employed at that time. We're talking 15 years ago. And I had to stop work for 6 months. Not begrudgingly. I was more than happy to be able to be in the position to do that. But life changed. And having to take that time away from business to care for my parents, it was a pleasure to be able to do it. And you make adjustments.
You make adjustments, and it is tough financially.
As Pastor earlier, the biggest thing in these scenarios is to communicate. And when you can communicate what everybody should be doing, when you communicate the boundaries and everybody's on the same page, you can expect that things are going to go a bit smoother. With regard to POAs, powers of attorney, there's a difference between a medical power of attorney and a general power of attorney. Now, I am not an attorney. I am by no means an expert. What I'm providing to you today and what Pat is sharing is information for you to ask some questions of the professionals. It is for you to have conversations with your tribe, with whoever, so that when these moments arise, and we're in an age now where these moments are arising.
Fast.
My moment arose when I was 43. So you just never know. Someone doesn't have to be 75 years old before a situation happens. So you just never know when your roles are going to reverse, and instead of your parents taking care of you, you're now taking care of the parent. So have those kinds of conversations. With regard to who you choose to be your power of attorney, that is a very important conversation to have and should be well thought out, because you want to pick somebody that is going to definitely look out for your best interest. And you know who that person is. You have children, you know which one. You have siblings, you know which one. You have friends, you know which one, wherever that person comes from. But don't surprise them. Don't let somebody just find out that they are your POA. Let them know. And also give that person the opportunity to say no. I don't want that responsibility. And even though it's something you want, that is a part of their life now. They're going to have to make some major decisions, and they may not want that responsibility. So have that conversation before you just designate somebody. Don't put something on somebody just because that's who you want. Let those people choose, have the right to say no. So have a plan B. If your first person says no, have that in place as well.
And just to piggyback on that, if the person does say no, don't take it personal. I know it may hurt, but don't take it personal, because you never know what that individual is going through that they may not have discussed with you.
Absolutely. That's true. And in that POA conversation, that person that you may designate medically to handle those things, that may not be the same person that you designate for the dissolvement of a real estate property or to do other things outside of your medical care. So those people are not necessarily the same person. It can be, but it does not have to be. Along with that, I strongly encourage, if you have not taken care of getting a will in place, at a minimum, you should write down what your wishes are while you are of sound mind and you can make those decisions, and nobody's going to question whether or not that's something you really wanted. So you don't want anybody coming behind and say, well, I don't really think she wanted that. Yes, she did, because this is where it's written, or here's the will. But when you create that will, there's going to be a few people, and I want to talk about how that breaks down, whether you do or don't have a will and who those people are. But let's go with the idea that you have your will in place. Let people know where the will is, or who the attorney is that prepared the will. Don't leave people guessing or looking all over the house,
a treasure hunt in
for
the house,
something that may or may not be there. But the people that are in the will, you don't have to let them know unless they're in another country and you don't see them very often or communicate, but you want them to have your whatever. Let the people know that are there. But if somebody is not in your will and they think they are, let that person know they're not in your will, because it's going to eliminate a whole lot of confusion for everybody else when you're gone.
And resentment. It's not fair to take that from one individual and giving them that responsibility, and then the other people are harboring resentment towards the person. That's not fair.
It's not fair. It's definitely not fair. When you can avoid that whole scenario, people a lot of times assume that they would be in someone's will just because they're related to them. That may not be the case. What is your relationship? That is a lot of times, and probably most of the time, what determines whether or not you're in somebody's will. Not your kinship. Not because I'm the firstborn grandchild. That does not make you necessarily be in the will. So have those conversations and let people know, because just as easily as my dad fell and broke his hip, that could have been his last day then. Thank God it wasn't. But when his time came, we were prepared at that point, and we'd had that conversation. If you don't have a will, if you don't intend to get a will, let me tell you what can happen when you don't take that step. Now, I'm also going to suggest, if you don't take the time to get a will, that you at least write your information down and have it notarized, and let a couple of people know where it is, because if something happens to the first person, you only told one person, now nobody knows. So share it with a couple of people. So when you take the time to do those things, that avoids a lot of confusion. If you choose not to, as in my case with my brother, I talked to him for years, up until 6 months or so before he passed. Get a will, get a will, get a will. He just said, whatever, just, whatever. Let it go. Just did not have any interest in it. He was in the hospital one time, and I had the bedside conversation with him about getting a will. I even had an attorney on the phone in the hospital. He was of sound mind, for the most part, with regard to taking this step. You're in the hospital. And my brother was a lover of cars, and he had 8. So I felt like if I hit him where his love was, it would trigger something in him. I said, because when it's all said and done, what I'm going to suggest happens is we give your this car to John down the street, your neighbor. We're going to give this car to the neighbor on the other side. So I felt like if I hit him where that might have some emotional attachment, it would make a difference. And it didn't. So I had no way to get to him. So ultimately, when he passed, he had no will. So this is what happened. There were 13 heirs. And he would have never, ever guessed that that was what he left us with. He would never have guessed that because he only had 4 sisters. There were 4 of us. There were 5, and us, the 4 sisters. And I guess in his mind, because our parents were gone, we would get whatever. But what he didn't know, because he didn't know the law of the state, was that my deceased sister's 8 children were now his heirs.
Oh my goodness.
Not only that, one of my sisters, who guess now is one of the heirs, her husband. These are the kinds of things that you leave when you don't have wills. If you're in a situation of sorts and you have not, as the caregiver, had this conversation with the people you're caring for, your aunt or grandma or whoever, and they have siblings and they have children, have these conversations. They can be hard depending on the relationship, but they're very necessary, and they also avoid a lot of confusion after people are gone. There are a multitude of ways that these things can be handled. If you pass with a will, then you need an executor to disseminate your property. If there is no will, then there's a person called an administrator, or as a female, an administratrix, which is what I ended up being, trying to get all these things done. So call an attorney. That initial phone call is not going to cost you anything, but at least get some information as to how to move forward in these processes, because as caregivers, we have things to do outside of stuff like this. So if you can take some responsibility off of your caregiver, who has opened up that space for you to have someone to enjoy the rest of your days, and you can take some burden or some emotions off of them, give them that peace to be able to take care of you in a way that's going to be helpful to you, but also something they can process in a way that is going to have a memory after you're gone, that that person can feel like they did a good thing or that they did the right thing.
Yeah. And I think it's important to remember you will question yourself on whether or not you've done or doing everything that you can do. It's just a given, but again, if you know in your heart that you're doing everything that you're doing, no matter what the individual say, don't beat up on yourself. You know what you're doing, keep doing it and move forward.
There are a lot of pieces to caregiving, which was why I wanted to have this conversation. I think a lot of times it's very surface, but when it becomes a long-term situation, there's a lot of things to talk about. One thing that my mom kept dealing with after my dad passed, and I finally had to break it down to her in a very realistic way. In something in her mind told her that she felt like she was a burden. She felt like, I'm invading your space. And especially now that my dad was no longer there, it just changed her. So to convince her that this was the plan, and that you're going to live here, she kept bringing up, well, maybe I should go to an assisted living facility. Maybe I should go to a nursing home. And I'm kind of there's no reason for you to go to a nursing home. And as far as an assisted living facility, there was some people she knew who lived at a facility, and I kept, no, this is home. This is it. And it got to the point where I felt like the only way I could get her to understand why she was not going to go to a facility, one, because I told her, as long as I am capable, you're going to live here. So we went home one day, and I took her to an assisted living facility, made an appointment, We went to the facility, sat down and talked with the administrator. And I wanted her to hear from somebody other than me what that could be like. We toured the room. So she got to see that instead of her having her own room, her own closet, her own full bathroom, she would be sleeping in a twin size bed with a roommate, someone she did not know. Her meals would be on a schedule throughout the day. There was common spaces, so yeah, she could go watch TV, but she got to watch with other people. Who decides what you're watching? But not only that, when it came to her finances, they were going to take everything except $66 a month. Medicare played into that a bit with regard to what she'd be left with. $66.
And how much is $66? You can spend
Pennies.
that on a go out and eat
2 times, maybe one.
At one time with 2 people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I took her to the facility just so she could get a real picture of what living in a facility was like. Okay, now she has something to compare to when now she's in our home. And after that visit, I heard nothing else about I want to go to an assisted living facility. So if it's going to be beneficial to have that conversation, make that thing that someone is thinking a reality, and so you have something to measure place A against if the other space is a facility of some sort, because a lot of these facilities out here aren't managed well, and you don't want your loved one living there. It's if you can avoid it. Yeah. If you can avoid it. So that was that conversation that we had all those years earlier was so that we could avoid that. And like I explained to her, as long as I'm capable of caring for you here at home, that's what we're going to do.
But plus, it's a better lifestyle. I mean, they may not see it at the time. And sometimes I think they do see it. They may not necessarily share it with you. So I do like the idea of what you did.
Yeah.
Showing, because it's one of those things. It's a difference being in your space than being in another space. And then you got people walking in and out. And you got like different nurses that come and go. And even down to your roommate that you're going to be rooming with. You know, that person may not be around for the whole duration of the time that you're there. And so it's different. It's an adjustment. And so, you know, before you go in that route, just make sure that is that what you really want to do?
That's what.
Is that what you really want to do?
Yeah. If there is no alternative, that's one thing.
Right. That's different.
That is very different. But if there is an alternative for you, if you are the person going into a caregiver's home, understand that it doesn't have to be that way. There are people living on the street because someone didn't take them in. Not saying that that's what will happen, but things happen. So the relationships that you have with your family members, a lot of times, is just going to be the place that determines where you end up living. And it may not be where you think sometimes. Yeah. So I hope that there's something that was said here in this video, or something that you saw with regard to organizing space for the person coming into your room, or for just seeing what your retreat might look like for you yourself as a single person, or for you and your husband, so that you can have comfort for you and for the person that you are going to be caring for. And if you are the person being cared for, understand that for someone to love you in that way, to love you enough to say, come and share my space, that is a huge consideration. And appreciate that somebody feels that way about you. Anything you'd like to add?
No, I think we pretty much touched on a lot of things. It's probably way more that we could talk about, but it would be like never ending.
We'll be here until June.
Yeah, I mean, it's just never ending. But, you know, just be respectful both ways. Again, I go back to communication. That's going to be your number one thing. Everybody's situations are different. And the situation as we go along is going to change over time. And
figure it
so
out.
where we are right now is not where we're going to be next week, next month, next year. And so, just breathe and do what you can, and don't beat yourself up.
Absolutely.
Give yourself grace.
Absolutely.
The bottom line, just give yourself grace.
Absolutely. So I'm going to leave Pat's information in the description box as well as pin in my comment. So if you are considering reconfiguring space and you don't know where to start, you want to reach out to her. She does online e-design. So that is an opportunity for you to be able to utilize her services, even though she's here in Virginia. And of course, you can do that wherever you are. And if you are in Virginia or in the Richmond area, feel free to reach out to her. Her contact information will be available, and utilize her services. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Until next time, everyone, have a fantastic start to your week, and I will see you very soon. Thank you so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you all in the next video. Bye.